topic of today's discussion. We are going to do it in two pieces. The first one, we will try and share with you a lot of examples from organizations that Rahul, Aarti, and Sumit and Abhinav will share, which talk about leveraging technology along the entire hire to retire life cycle of an employee in an organization, starting with recruitment, onboarding, retention, learning and development, performance management, to even offboarding. So that's going to be one part of the conversation, and the second part of the conversation is really going to be talking about how do you really drive a tech-led transformation in HR. What is it that you do to prepare? What are the stages? What are the risks and mitigants? So that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to first start the conversation with you, Aarti. Recruitment is pretty much the first phase of the entire employee life cycle. So share with us what your organization has done in both selecting the right candidates and enhancing candidate experience and onboarding using technology.
Absolutely, and I think you're right. We are talking about different aspects and moments that matter for people as an employee and as a candidate as well. Just for a quick background, as a reminder, I belong to IT industry. So a lot of what I say will, you'll be able to contextualize if, you just remember that, because I'm talking about huge workforce, generally, which is a normal thing in IT industry. So we hire in thousands. Every year, depending on a good year or bad year, it could go up to 50,000 people being hired, which means you can imagine the scale of candidates being explored and the number of joinees that could be there on a day, because it's not equally spread out across the days and the weeks. So we have recently implemented global applicant tracking system, which is of course powered by SAP and SuccessFactors 2.0. It was extremely important. We had systems in place, and just before this conversation, we were in Speakers Lounge discussing that how okay or not okay is it to implement systems in pieces. And my view is that when you and my experience, when you implement systems in pieces, at some point in time, making them talk to each other becomes very difficult. And that's what happened. As we kept growing, we kept implementing, different systems digitized. But recently, we got it all together and digitized, and of course, recruitment was part of that. Apart from that, we're just going to introduce a candidate relationship management system. Now, that's very, very important. When you're talking about larger numbers, and my colleagues who are dealing with volumes, and otherwise as well, but volumes specifically, you have to look at the experience that you're bringing in. Efficiency of an organization is one part. Of course, you're looking for it, and that's why you're investing. But what is the experience you're giving out to people, whether hired or not hired? Everybody should aspire for, I went through this interview, I need to get in there. And that's the experience that you need to create. So CRM system will actually, it will be AI-driven selection and screening of people, easier matching of profiles to the positions. Then you can have digital workplace through CRM, where hiring managers can go and select people, see the application stage, interview scheduling. Everything gets automated and creates a seamless experience for people. I'm sure there are HR leaders in the room who have probably got a LinkedIn message that I was interviewed, I have no feedback, what do I do? Can you guide me to the right person? I sometimes do get it. And I really hope that CRM will bring in more transparency and more accountability for an organization, at the same time, employees as well. Then, of course, we are also talking about how can technology create a balance with the human need. And this is, again, no mindless implementation of technology, which is very important. And I come to your point of onboarding of these people. If we are hiring in large number, we are, of course, onboarding people in large number. And when you onboard people in a larger organization, they have to land well, or else they will get lost. So what we call ourselves as in Capgemini is integration of people in an organization. And that has to have a right balance of digitization plus the connect, because these are people who are joining us. They need to know the organization, and if there is no face to the organization, it's going to be difficult, and that's not what we want. We want to create personalization, at the same time, make it efficient for both the employers and the employee. And we recently implemented, actually, a year back or so, we implemented a program called ICAP, which is a proudly so Brandon Hall Award winner as well. But it's a program where you integrate people into the organization for 9 months. So day one onboarding of providing documentation, etc., is not enough. And to enable all these things, you need highly digitized environment. So these are the areas that I can think of that, which have really helped me to take the employee experience to the next level. Because any candidate who's trying to come for the process is the candidate I want the person to aspire to join Capgemini. And then, of course, the onboarding should be such that the person is landing into the organization for success and remembers those days.
Thank you. Those are terrific examples, and especially in driving business outcomes like increased throughput or better candidate experience. I think it all goes towards building the overall employer brand. So thank you for sharing those, Aarti. I'm going to come to you, Sumit, and you come from a product company, and most of your products have been focused more on the frontline layer and how they can enable managers to perform their duties towards people management better. So share with us, how are you seeing managers lead hybrid teams which are a combination of AI agents and human employees, and what are some of the skills that you believe managers of today need to manage such hybrid teams?
Sure. Thanks, Urvashi. So it's great that you bring up the point of the frontline workforce. I mean, as we all know, frontline workforce makes up about 80–85% of the global workforce, right? If we were to take out the possible exception of, let's say, the IT, BPO industry, frontline workforce in manufacturing or retail or healthcare or in all of these places, the way technology has been rolled out to these set of people versus the non-frontline has always been slightly disconnected to some extent. In fact, I want to quote a survey that UKG conducted a couple of months back specifically on frontline workforce. About 12,000 participants across 11 countries, including India. If I were to take an India slice out, a couple of things popped out of it. About 86% of the frontline workforce say that they feel burnout at some point in time, right? About 57% of them actually say that they believe that the culture for them is different from the culture for the rest of the organization, right? And if you look at what they really need, it is not too many things. It is, of course, pay is an important factor. It's probably number one. But flexibility is number two, and work schedules is number three. The challenge that comes in, and I'll get into some more detail on this, but what we are dealing with when it comes to frontline workforce is two parts. One, the frontline workforce is generally the youngest one because they are entering the workforce. So they are digital natives. They understand technology well. And we also have this onslaught of AI, which there is a fear of maybe AI replacing jobs, augmenting jobs, and so on and so forth. So both of these need to be managed. Coming to the expectations of the frontline workforce itself, flexibility has been very well defined in various ways over the last 3–4 years since the pandemic hit us. But the flexibility has been defined more for people like us. Work flexibility for a frontline workforce on the shop floor or on a retail store or in a hospital, what does flexibility mean for that person is not very well defined. I mean, even if it is defined, it's very difficult to create those possibilities. Work flexibility could be like shift swapping. Can they go ahead and decide their own shifts, pick from their own set of shifts, depending on when they want to have caregiving work versus coming to office or the factory. These are not easy aspects to manage manually, and that's where I come to technology. That's where technology actually plays a very significant role when you have to drive more flexibility for your frontline workforce. It's not easy to create a policy saying 3 days you can work from home and 2 days you can come to office. You just can't do that. You've got to have every person on the shop floor at every point in time, whatever shop floor we are talking about. So how do you still give them flexibility yet deliver the business is an important part of the tech investments that companies need to do. Now, adding a little more to what Urvashi asked, when it comes to frontline workforce, AI has actually two components that I'd like to bring in. One is how is AI helping them deliver their business better, deliver their work better? And second is how can AI help actually improve their well-being? These are two different parts of how a frontline employee needs to be taken care of. We are seeing a huge amount of investments in AI when it comes to how employees can deliver better. In the IT world, we know, for example, Jensen Huang recently mentioned that they just cannot do any work without AI anymore, right? So AI, along with the frontline employees, write code for them. Agentic AI is coming, as many of you would have heard. AI-based agents are coming, where in the CRM or in the customer relationship world, you would see a lot of work being done by agents and a lot of productivity improving of employees. So that's where AI will support frontline employees big time. There's no doubt about it. That's the productivity side, delivering business outcomes. To me, something that is more relevant coming from the HCM software side of the world, if you will, is how can AI actually help frontline employee well-being? And that, to me, is where a lot of investment is happening around how you can actually drive more flexibility for frontline employees. We are talking of these people, the 20-somethings who are coming into workforce, who will need these flexibility. They are not there to stay forever. And we need to have the right tools available so that you can provide the flexibility and yet get the right productivity out of these people. So to me, it's a big balancing act between technology and people for the managers to be able to leveraging and getting the right output.
Thank you so much, Sumit, because you made such an important point on how are you leveraging technology not just to manage the changing aspirations of employees on the floor, but also investing in their well-being, which is such an important part of overall employee experience and engagement. So thank you for sharing those perspectives. Moving on, I'm going to speak to you, Rahul, and I know you have, you come from the manufacturing industry where you've got manufacturing units all over the world. How are you leveraging technology and especially chatbots to drive employee engagement and capture employee sentiment for a globally dispersed employee population?
You're right. Unlike you and Aarti, I don't come from an IT industry, manufacturing, chemical manufacturing. And we don't hire a lot, we don't lose a lot, we grow a lot. So we make sure that people are grown in their roles. And we leverage digital in order to make the life of employees simpler, you know. Like for example, how do we provide a 24/7 HR support to our employees so that the HR guys can focus more on capability building, shortening the organizational learning curve, enhancing efficiencies, leadership development, so on and so forth. So a lot of mundane, routine activities are being moved through this chatbot, which we institutionalized in the past. We are institutionalizing one in the near future. Basically, the 24/7 HR support, be doing the employee pulse and engagement, job satisfaction, dipstick, and then creating a design center around that in order to support the interventions around that. I always believe that, you know, we should leverage digital or technology by doing a litmus test, whether it is making life simpler, enhancing efficiencies, and optimizing cost. Very often we just do that as a tick mark activity because the world is doing that. You know, I think we should be slightly mindful of when you travel through that journey. And therefore it is very contextual in my view, otherwise you end up spending huge amount of cost. Unless you are an organization which is, you know, if you're a 50-store company and want to be 500-store company, then you can travel through that path. But as a company, we don't hire a lot, we don't lose a lot, so we are a little mindful and then we do things in order to make things simpler. Thanks.
Thanks, Rahul. Thank you for sharing those perspectives. Abhinav, I'm going to move on to you, and you've had this experience of watching a lot of organizations implement a transformation journey in HR. And one of the key areas in which a lot of technology has been applied in HR is learning and development. And we spoke about it yesterday as well. It's an area where organizations are using AI, gamification, and a bunch of other tech interventions. So share with us examples of some of the best practices or the best interventions you've seen in this area.
Certainly. So thank you for the question, Urvashi. The funny part with the technology is that it keeps on evolving without knowing where to be used by the users. And that's the same thing which is happening with the AI. See, the two shifts we have noticed, especially in the L&D, and when I say that, I'm covering large cap, mid-market companies, all of it, irrespective of the sector. First is, we have often attempted L&D to be a function which hopefully should produce a workforce which is fit for purpose for the future. And most often when you start questioning, and I come from a part of the business where we like to talk about, is it giving back something to the P&L rather than just putting in the money. But what we noticed, the moment you start questioning about the return on the learning investments, there is a gap between the tech thinking or the tech enablement versus your actual impact upon the business. Now it could be about having more FTEs being onboarded on more accounts and producing more business for you, or it is about that you have not hired 2,000 FTEs in surplus while you had the same skills in the organization without having no visibility to those salaries available. So especially in the L&D, what we are noticing is that at one hand you have your suppliers, your product vendors, who are continuously feeding the features which are AI enabled. Now, when companies look at the systems which can be brought in to modernize L&D as a function, the question remains, A, do you need it? So that's a separate part. We'll talk about it in a moment. The second is, which personally I believe many organizations must do, is that it's your employees, it's your business, you know the data, you know the business. So should there be an effort to build something internally which is far more contextualized to what the learning paths married with the career paths must look like. What eventually ends up happening, and especially in the large cap organizations which often are, say, $10 billion plus top line, is that there's a hybrid mix of lot of systems which have been existing in the past. They normally go upgrade and you end up adopting a lot of AI features which eventually are not utilized or scaled. And a very less part of the systems which are built very contextualized, but unfortunately they don't talk to your enterprise applications. Now, contrastly speaking, if you think about digital natives, which is the startup ecosystem, quite honestly, you'll be surprised to know that they're zero on tech. I'm not talking front end, which is the fancy application which we all use. If you look at the back end, if you look under the hood, they're actually zero tech, bare minimum tech. So how is that those organizations are so quick to reinvent and repurpose their employees by identifying the right L&D interventions? It's simply because they have a very good handle on the skill clustering. So most of as you grow up, the line of sight which you lose as you're growing up is the skill clustering and the skill mapping to actually the line of business you are going to be having in next 5 years. So often the L&D, AI, non-AI doesn't really matter. It runs on the fact and assumes that a bunch of courses which are important for a career / a role, and that eventually will help a career path. We must be very mindful that we are quite aggressively moving away from a role-based business to actually a very specific skill set business. Quick example. These days one of the talk of the town is developer productivity, and we are claiming that a lot has been produced by AI. Fact is true, but not many people are getting to see, because nobody is looking at the talent supply chain as a business function, that if you're expanding your bottom of the pyramid, your mid of the pyramid is not squeezing in. In fact, it is broadening, because you would need more people to qualify an output produced by AI, which needs more wisdom and experience to say, hey, this is fit for the client. So therefore, the L&D systems are now having two parts, which is combined together, which is one is e-learning, second is the gamification. And I would encourage, and I do encourage my clients that the moment you start seeing L&D as not a function, but as a revenue-making function. Quick example, there are companies in the market who are making money on L&D. Now, look at their systems. They're so intense, they're so engaging, they have so rich features, and your employee is dabbling with two sides of the world. One, he gets into your company. Second, he goes out of the company. So he has fancy applications like LinkedIn and Myntra to dabble with. And second, he has your boring, monolithic application which are being built inside a company to dabble with. So there's a mismatch of experience. So L&D functions, in fact, I can, without naming few companies, but I'm seeing some top 3 IT companies in our country, $14 billion top line. They started up putting some of the micro applications which mimics the journey of an employee from the moment he or she gets hired till the time he or she remains in the ecosystem, and provide nudges which is linked to his or her profile build-up. So it's a personal satisfaction that I'm progressing. Second, it's linked to your incentives. So there is a bit of a threat, a pleasure, or a pain attached to the way I grow in the organization. And third is a pay. So I reward you if you do well, and I'm not penalizing you, but hey, I'm just stalling you by the time you get up to the skill set. So that's a modernized L&D view in brevity, but a lot is being done by the systems. Final thoughts, I don't think so you need to adopt everything what everybody is providing. And I strongly encourage to build an AI L&D built on your needs with your own data, rather than taking up a product and then adopting and then calibrating it later.
Thank you for those fantastic insights, Abhinav, and I couldn't agree with you more, because more and more L&D in every organization has to cease to become a fad and more of a commercial business proposition, and I think that's where true adoption and outcomes happen as well. And actually, it's a great segue into the next question, which I'm going to ask you, Aarti. A lot of organizations are undertaking a transformation journey by just putting a digital layer on top of their existing processes. So it's more of a tick in the box. What do you think organizations should be doing to not just have it as a tick in the box, but actually do a total rethink or redesign and transformation of their processes?
Absolutely, and yes, it's a nice segue, because what Abhinav said is very relevant to my thought process on this topic, and you don't have to implement everything. And, there are a few examples, like Rahul said, that, with his workforce, does he need to have a candidate relationship management with so much of AI insights, and does he need to do that and more personalization at an organization level? With few people will be better, situation to look at. And this is what, I keep telling everybody that, when you want to digitize, you say, I want to digitize this function. You have to identify what are the activities that you need to look at technology for, and where is it that you want to still want some personalization and some human interaction there. Some of the things that we did, and Capgemini, we were discussing, Capgemini has just finished its implementation of a large automation and digitization product, and it's going through a huge transformation. We are in a hypercare mode right now because we went live just 2-3 months back, which means that, we had just taken on this journey, and what worked well for us was, of course, making people at the center of it. When the employee is at the center of it and you make it easy for people to understand what is it that we are doing, it is better adapted, and you pick the right things on what is the intention. So when there is an honesty of intention, the transactions become easier, and that's what goes through the organization. So first thing is employee at the heart of thing, and then you create that hyper personalization at scale, because I will continue to talk at scale. That's number one. Second is when you create an environment where people understand the importance, because you can create layer. What does it mean? Firstly, choosing the right things to automate and digitize. Then second is having it in the right space where people actually use it. So if you create certain digitizations in certain processes, people will say, okay, I will use it because organization is forcing me to do that. But when you create the benefits for people, that's where you start looking at it. And you have to set the mindset there. For example, if we have location agnostic team, and that's a very common thing in some of our industries, are you able to create those virtual workspaces? Is it highly digitized where people can relate to and make it effective and productive? The moment you start doing these little things, people start seeing the value of it, and then doesn't remain as just a peripheral contact with digitization, because you make it part of your culture. For example, performance management. Now, we want to create transparency in performance management. We want to create technology-driven performance management. What does it mean? Does it mean that, I stop giving feedback in person to, somebody who reports to me or has been working for me? For me, what it means is enabling people to draw feedbacks from multiple quarters at multiple, set frequency in a year, to be able to drive your own progression from the comments that are coming through. Abhinav spoke about L&D, and we have it now. You see your performance review, there is a subjective text analysis, and you can get thrown with the options that you can do. So your suggestions that come for your learning are based on your role. What is it that you want to do in an organization for your career progression? And imagine a situation, and for some time back, it was a fantasy for me. But now if you look at it, there is an organization where there is a role, you have to fit somebody in. And the system throws you all the profiles that can fit into your role. It's no more an exercise where you call up this manager, that manager, do you have people, do you have this profile? No, the system throws that, based on my learning and skill framework, these are the people who will fit into this position. You internally fulfill the position if the number is okay, or else you go outside. But that's creating efficiency and creating growth for people in real sense, rather than just creating, an overcast of digitization. Similarly, if you talk about well-being, and well-being is an area that, we're all kind of looking at integrating into our work lives. It is very effective to have automation in that area, but I think, many of us have those mood monitors and, mood diaries where you assess what's going on. Gone are the days of, yearly employee engagement surveys. You have real-time feedback keep coming to you, and we of course have partners doing that for us, and you're constantly monitoring what is the well-being situation. Now, can you digitize the whole well-being umbrella? I don't think so. The spectrum of counseling, can you have chatbot counseling? I wouldn't say. I'm still not in favor. Maybe it'll take some time to think about it, but those areas, you still need that personal interaction, or even if somebody's behind the scene, but that a person needs to handle that. But can you digitize the subjective text analysis? Can you digitize what people are feeling? Yes, you can. So you have to choose what you can and what you cannot. Chatbots can work very nicely in AI-driven environment where you're answering questions on simple policies. But asking chatbots to counseling somebody who's going through a mental well-being issue is, again, so make a choice. Where is it that you want to really, implement this? So choose your spaces. What is it that you want to digitize? Again, I would also say that, you have to look at employee experience. Efficiency is, of course, there because that's where your money lies. That's where you create, effective systems. That's where you create more, viability within your leadership, but at the same time, employee experience has to be at the heart, because those are the people who are using it, who will make it successful or kill it. So that experience is extremely important. How do you create that and weave into the whole thing is extremely critical for.
Indeed, and well said, because it is about how the coexistence of human beings and AI technology agents will happen, and equally, how are you choosing your areas carefully? And Rahul, I would like to ask you, basis a lot of the discussion that has happened, is it really necessary to implement technology across the board, or what are the factors you would consider to take a call on where is it that you will embed technology and where you won't?
I think I'll take a step back to look at what it will do to the business. The business interest has to come first, then your need to digitalize So when I say business interest, it is in the order like, whether it will enhance your customer delight, will it enhance your employees, satisfaction, will it make your processes simple, will it optimize cost? So I think you have to make your intervention pass through this litmus test, whether it is relevant with what you are doing in your business. If I am a retail company with, 500 stores, then, the context is very different compared to one or two manufacturing locations. If I have a company which is having international locations, but all these international locations are independently operating because these are all different entities all put together. The idea is not to consider, then your interventions are very different. So you need to figure it out, take a step back and understand what it will do, what digitalization will do, what technology will serve your business, and then take a call, because it is not about right or wrong, it is about doing things that is relevant and relatable to the last mile. Then it makes sense.
Totally. So business relevance always stops, I think, any other factor while implementing technology. And with that, we're going to change gears. And I'm going to come to you, Abhinav, and to you, Sumit. And we're going to talk about how do we really look at implementing technology or undertaking a transformation journey. So tell me, what are the, and Abhinav, this question is for you. So in many organizations where you've seen this implemented, what are the typical pitfalls or risks that you have seen organizations face as they undertake a transformation journey? And what are some of the mitigants that they put in place?
Great question. So, quite honestly, at a summary level, three pitfalls. First of all is the leadership. It's quite interesting to see that most of the leadership, and this is with all due respect to everybody here and outside, but most of the leadership in today's time, who is supposed to be leading a very technologically advanced led transformation, is not technologically literate. And by literate, I'm just saying aware. I'm not even meaning that hands on the laptop. And what happens is, if you do not have a right wisdom which can act in a way that I know where to steer this technology to get the right business input and output, the transformation jobs are failing. And by this means, I'm talking about a lot of multi-million-dollar initiatives. Second one is, am I really thinking this transformation as a differentiator? I quote an example. One of our very recent conversations with one of the CXOs, they have taken a vision that in next 2 years, they want to transform the business operations so that can become a sales differentiator in the market against the competition. Now, nobody has ever thought that how, to Aarti's point, resource fulfillment and bringing it down a process time from onboarding to the billing can be a differentiator in the market, but that's the thinking is there. I mean, and that's the new age companies are thinking about. The last one is, have I got the right partners to play in? And you'll be surprised to know, Urvashi, that in spite of having too many suppliers in the market who can serve you on end systems, consulting services, there is a need of, if I may use the word as Sutradhar, who can bound these all outside-looking services to bring in a cohesive program together for one responsible in the organizations. So 3 large at a very strategic level, what could be the impediments? Mitigation, frankly, not one answer, but we see some positive signs wherein leadership admits that, hey, I have a vision, but I may not necessarily have a competency. So can I bring somebody in? And that's the reason at least you see the new appointments wherein companies are now quite open to academia. They go and actively participate with IITs and ISCs to bring those talent in. They are also not shying away bringing in the tech startups into the foray, because these guys have thought it, they built it, and they scaled it. So why can't we have them as partnering? And I see many companies doing it very openly because they know that's important. B, there's a lot of culture of co-creation. And I do see, being at EY, we see a lot of companies who come to us and saying that, though we are your client, but we would like to co-develop, co-create this with you. Yeah, it's so weird to see yourself on the screen while you're speaking. So So a co-creation, co-development of the mandate. I think these two are fairly good strategies if I come to say that what can really work. Rest of it is business minutia. Somewhere we may argue the business case is strong, business case is not strong. Well, that's execution. But in terms of the top 2 points which I think may matter is definitely co-creation, co-development with partners work and involvement of folks who have done it and done it from grounds up outside your industry works.
And do you also see any ethical challenges around data and data readiness, data privacy, and all the other risks that one is speaking about these days?
100%. Well, if you are not only an Indian subcontinent organization, this risk is actually quite massive, is quite scale. While we still are talking about DPDP and we still are figuring out how do we really think about, or what's our take on the personal data, I do see organizations who operate globally having variety of views on things like employee name and employee number. We still are struggling that when we use or when we train AI models, to what extent can I really consume it? Interestingly, 2 or 3 things have started happening, and this is courtesy with a lot of apex bodies in the market being sponsored by Alphabet, Microsoft, and Googles of the world, who have genuine interest to promote this idea because they are the classic AI providers, that there are frameworks available which at least neutralizes and baselines that how do you, at a bare minimum, must look at the risks pertaining to personal data and the training of the model. Quote an example, just a couple of weeks back, I'm not sure how many of you have seen it, it's a very interesting observation. Meta introduced Meta in WhatsApp. Now, if you were to ask Meta how many R's in strawberries, it was still quoting as 2. But if you were to ask a very complex problem to Meta, the answer was 100% right. What does it tell you? It tells you a very simple thing. It's hallucination at extremes. So complexity of the problem is being handled well with the model, which simply means that the data which I have sufficiently is available, which is structured data. And the problems which are very simple to solve for are not yet handled adequately, instead, unless asked several times by the models, because data is just not available. Now, if I look inward in our organization, besides the HR systems, rest of the applications have quite unstructured data in terms of the connectedness and its correlation. Talk about your data around finance and talk about your payroll data with your employee master data. So we haven't seen security gone out of the window in any conversation. In fact, we see more paranoia around cybersec. And interestingly speaking, we are still talking basics around mitigating the risks of using data into AI. Nothing fancy has happened. The only thing which I at least see, which is a very positive sign, the CISOs are very open to apply AI-led interventions to catch the risk and to self-mitigate it. You spoke about, I think Sumit spoke about the agentic workflows, and if everything goes right, I think in a year or 2, we would start seeing agents who would be able to self-heal any data breach, not especially at the applications level, but at least the perimeter level. So from an HR and from hire to retire perspective, I think as long as your system of records is able to have data which is structured and catered to a certain logic, pretty secure, moment it goes out, yes, there's a point to worry about still.
Thank you. That was very insightful. And I'm going to ask Sumit the last question before I do a quick wrap-up. I've been told that we've got 5 minutes to go. So one of the big topics of discussions, Sumit, these days is that a lot of the technology that we use comes with its inbuilt biases. So as someone working in a product company, what are some of the remedies that you guys apply to ensure that biases don't creep into much of the tech that gets implemented?
Absolutely. It's a very important and relevant question. I think Abhinav spoke a little bit about how as a company you can manage your data better. But as a provider, as a SaaS solution provider, we have thousands of customers worldwide, right? And I spoke about frontline workforce earlier. The reason why that's close to me is our company does a lot of work on frontline workforce, and I think we are the company that has the maximum data of frontline workforce across the world. Now, why do I say that? Because the age of technology, which was about building software automation, is over now. We are going to the next step where the age of technology is data. And how do we provide the right data solutions, us or anyone else, to our customers? And when and that's what AI is really, right? AI is all about training on data. I liken AI to a baby. In fact, all AI today is a baby. When a baby is growing up in a household, that baby's frameworks, values are formed on the basis of what he or she actually sees around her uncle, mama, chacha, papa, mummy, vagara, right? That's what that baby forms. And the baby does not know that is right or wrong. It's exactly what AI is. It is what you are training the AI on, right? And AI is in its infancy, guys. Let's face it. Now the fact is, and that brings me to the point that Urvashi mentioned, is how do you try and eliminate biases? So bias elimination is not just a technology game. It's a tech game for sure. It's a data game for sure. But it's also a framework game. It's a governance game for an organization like us. What kind of code of conduct do we have? What kind of governance policies do we have? What kind of teams do we have? Are they diverse enough to be able to bring in the right level of diversity as far as reviewing the algorithms are concerned? Of course, do we have diverse enough data, which Abhinav talked about? If you don't have enough data, you will get mistakes. So you need to have enough data. That's the starting point. But then you need to have the right teams. You need to have the diverse teams. You need to maybe even have external auditors coming and looking at it. You need to have the right testing mechanisms. So all of that needs to be in place for us to make AI more and more ethical, less biased. So to us, I think that's important. To me, the key aspect here is not technology, but the frameworks that are built in your organization and the values actually your organizations are built on actually will determine a lot of how you will be able to take care of biases or eliminate biases.
That does give us some bit of comfort at least. So just as a wrap up, quickly I'm going to ask each of the panelists to describe in one phase what a tech transformation journey should look like to enhance employee experience. Rahul, starting with you.
Empower employees, efficiency enhancement, and optimize cost. That's a phrase comes into my mind.
Great. Aarti?
So the tagline for Capgemini is get the future you want. And that's what we promote. So I would say drive with passion and intent.
I'll just say better employee experience, better productivity, both business as well as...
They go hand in hand.
For me, the P&L must improve and the cost of delivery should come down.
It's all about productivity.
It's all the measurement.
Great, thank you. But I think just to wrap up, I think thank you to all the panelists for sharing some very, very interesting insights. A few takeaways for me really. It's about ensuring that you're doing a fundamental change and not just doing a tick in the box when you're looking at implementing technology. Technology needs to be for the right business outcomes, and that's really the starting point and not just a fad. Also, in the foreseeable future, technology and human beings will coexist, not replace each other, but really, I think, enable each other to drive greater productivity and greater value for organizations. And then above all, it's always important to keep an eye on the ethical ways of implementing technology, the privacy of your data, and ensuring that ultimately you're driving the right business outcomes. So thank you very much to all the panelists for the engaging discussions, and I hope the audience found some value in it. Thank you.
Well, can we have a louder round of applause for that fantastic conversation? Thank you for giving us an inside scoop on how really technology can be leveraged to create a better workplace. With that, may I please urge Ms. Aarti Srivastav to please felicitate all the speakers with a memento. Let's give it up for all our speakers right there. Mr. Rahul Pinjarkar, CHRO at Tata Chemicals. Our moderator, let's give it up for her, Ms. Urvashi Singh, Senior Vice President, HR Genpact Limited. Thank you so very much for sharing and really weaving that whole conversation for us. Would like to thank Mr. Sumit Doshi, Country Manager, India, UKG. And of course, Mr. Abhinav Johri, partner principal at EY.